So today I'll be talking about the power of having a speak up culture, having environments where employees' voice is welcome, and it's really good for business.
Wow.
What? Okay, red light means we're on. And we're live. We're live. We're live. We're here.
We're here.
We're live. Live from our basements. Hello, LinkedIn universe. So good to have so many of you here. Hello, everyone. Steven Shadletsky here. Delighted to be with you again. Pardon me, I was just dancing to that background music. Hello.
I was just seeing my good friends. You have like my favorite Canadians on there.
Yeah.
Leah Davey, Ron Tide, MBS.
Yes.
Amazing.
Yes. And now you.
And now me.
And now you. Not Canadian, but maybe Canadian at heart.
I'm visiting
a
Vancouver at the end of next month. So I love Canada. And I'm visiting.
Wonderful.
I'm actually visiting Montreal over Labor Day weekend. So
Beautiful.
I'd love to be a Canadian.
Beautiful. Well, now we can include you on that little welcome reel, including LGO. This is Laura. So delighted you're here, and so delighted we're joined by many. Please hop into the chat. Let us know who's here, where you're joining us from. I have had the opportunity to speak with you a few times now. We just did a live on your LGO TV a couple of weeks ago.
Yes.
Which was a hoot. And it was one of those conversations where we hit minute 45 and it's like, oh, we're done. Let's keep going. So this is going to be dynamic and fun and funny. When we were introduced, our mutual friend Ashley introduced us, and she wrote in the email, she described you as a kick in the ass wrapped in a warm hug. And I'm like, yeah, that's accurate.
That's accurate.
That's accurate. So we're here to talk about work, career, a TED video of yours that is coming out potentially today on your latest work, Wonderhell. And when you described Wonderhell to me, I was like, that's a thing and that's real. So I'm so excited to talk about your next book, Wonderhell. Your previous book that just came out a couple years ago, Limitless, has done wonderfully well. So delighted to talk about that and all the fun things. We have amazing people here. Shelby, hello, Shelby. Kaz is here. Vino, great. Vino, good to see you. Danny from Manchester, please keep hopping in, and we will be taking your questions and comments live as we go here. So please continue to comment as we go. LGO, what's up? What's kicking? What should we chat about here?
Well, I have been thinking a lot about our conversation since we talked on my podcast. And if anybody hasn't seen it, I would encourage you to go check that out, because we had such a great conversation about speak up culture, about talking about the things that matter to you and how that actually creates a culture at work where everybody can do their best work. And I've been thinking a lot about how your work and my work really intersect, right? Because you can't have a speak up culture and talk about things that matter to you if you're still following someone else's definition of success, right? So my whole book is about why success doesn't equal happiness. And so I would love to talk about the intersection of, like, once we do realize what success means to us, what do we do about it, right? Like, how do we go about then living into that life? Because I think in order for us to speak up and change the culture of our workplaces and even our communities and our families, we have to figure out what we're actually speaking up about.
Love that. And I so enjoyed our conversation on your podcast, which we'll drop the link in there for anyone who's yet to see that, because you also shared so many good examples of leading your own business. I know you've done exec search in the past. And I distinctively remember you describing an example where you went to like a team dinner or lunch and the head of the table seat was open. And it's like, I guess I'll sit there. And you looked around the table and you realized that everyone was behaving the way that they thought they should behave to be more like you. And it's like full stop, hard stop. Like, that is not going to make us more successful here. So I'm seeing a connection in that as well, that it's both about us individually as well as teams and organizations. So
yeah, and what's so funny about that dinner, I've actually been thinking about that also since our conversation, is that, like, it wasn't that suddenly I was like, "Oh, I'm supposed to like nobody's eating until I start eating. Nobody's ordering until I order." Like they left the head of the seat for me. They noticed where I parked. Like they're emulating me as a leader.
Mm-hmm.
And the problem was it wasn't I didn't go to leader school. Like I didn't know how to do it. I didn't know what I was supposed to be doing. And so I was like, wait, should I order the like something that's the most expensive thing, the least expensive thing, the
Yeah.
middle thing? Are they if I order the middle thing, is no one going to order anything more expensive than me? Like what are my actions doing
Yeah.
to silence them living into who they want to be and showing me who they can be? And, I never went to leader school. I didn't figure it out. I didn't know how to do it. And I think a lot of leaders find themselves in the place where,
Mm.
you do good work, so you get promoted. So now you're managing other people doing that work, and then you get promoted. Now you're managing the manager of other people doing that work. But nowhere along the lines did somebody say, "Oh, by the way, here's how to do it. Here's how to help other people be themselves." And,
Mm.
also at the same time, as we get promoted to leadership, we're expected to talk more. And the more we talk, obviously, the less we are able to listen. And so you stop learning what actually
Mm.
matters to everyone around you. And so I'm sort of like, it's part of why I'm so fascinated by this idea of the speak up culture, because we, you know, we as leaders have to role model the listening up also in order
Yes.
to encourage the speak up.
Yes. Oh, I have so many thoughts coming at me. This is so good. So, we probably discussed this, but two truths as a leader: a whisper is a shout, and everyone's listening.
Yes.
Right. So, I'm now thinking of a Seinfeld reference of Jerry going to Mendy's, the steakhouse, and saying, "Oh, just have a salad." Now, everyone's going to order salad at a steakhouse because our quote fearless leader, which doesn't exist, by the way, no such thing as fearless. They're following your cues,
Hmm.
which is so good. And then further, the more senior you become in an organization, the further away you can get from the truth, because we're hierarchical and people offer us deference because we hold power over them. But the great leaders are the ones who make it human and humanize it and say that I'm in support of you just as you're in support of me. This is a mutual relationship here. And I show up for your success and you show up for my success. But I think what's so interesting is, and I'd love to hear more about this, which with Limitless and helping people define their own version of success and then going after it. Like, say more about that. Say more about your process there. Like, help us as we are these individuals operating in groups with pressure from peers and media and society and our bosses and colleagues, how we figure out what our own version of success is, and then how pursuing that can make us feel fulfilled or happier.
Sure. So my book Limitless really comes from um, 20 years in executive search, where I was paid by my clients to go out and find and recruit away on their behalf some of the most successful people in the world.
Mm-hmm.
Which, Shed, sounds like a hard job, except I was calling them because of all the success, but they were all calling me back because despite all this success, they weren't very happy in their
Ah,
work. And we are promised that it's like you're only one promotion, one new title, one corner office, one pay increase away from happiness. And so we go and we go and we go and we strive and we strive and we strive and we get to the top. And then we turn around and we're like, the top of what? Like, is this really where I want to be? Like, I
yeah.
filled in all the check boxes along somebody else's path, somebody else's checklist of success. All the boxes are full. Why do I still feel empty?
Yeah. And
And
what's next? Do I keep climbing or do I look for a different peak?
right,
Yeah.
what's next? What's next? What's next? There must be something else out there, right? We just think, and we live in this world of, of the consumerism. So it's like it's one purchase away, we're one get rich quick scheme away. It's one, instant diet pill away. We always think I'll be happy when. And I don't know, life is short. Like I want to be happy now. So, I started to think about the handful of people who I wasn't able to recruit away. And I started thinking about my own career, right? In my career, I dropped out of law school to join a presidential campaign. I ended up working in the White House. I left the White House in the middle of the first administration. Nobody does that. And I went to
Mm.
the best search firm in the world doing exclusively nonprofit mission driven search. And I left that to start my own firm. Nobody does that. And then I sold that company 15 years in when I was at the top of my game and I could have just, rested on my laurels forever. Nobody does that. And
Mm.
so I started thinking about why at all these moments when I was at the top, I went somewhere else. And it was because I was successful, but I also wasn't happy. And so I started to think about what these people had and what I needed in each of these moments. And it turns out that I didn't need success as written by somebody else, as defined by somebody else. What I needed was consonance, this
Mm,
alignment, this flow, when the very best of what I love to do was being called upon to solve a problem I actually cared about. And I was rewarded by solving that problem in a way that was personally, karmically, emotionally, financially meaningful to me. But
mm,
at every age and at every stage, what I loved to do, what mattered to me, how I wanted to be rewarded changed. And I think what happens is that at some point you're 15, 16, 17 years old and somebody's like, "Hey, Shed, pick a path, pick a major, pick a trade, pick a
yeah.
college, pick a job." And we're like, "Okay." But the problem is when we're 15, 16, 17 years old, what we don't have is a frontal lobe, like the actual part of our brain that dictates good, logical, sound decision making. So we're asked to make this decision that's going to affect the very rest of our lives when we literally do not have the capacity to make a good one.
Yeah.
So we pursue success in this checklist form, but it's not necessarily success for us.
Yeah. That's why I love it when people go on a gap year, or if you've heard of the book Startup Nation.
Yes,
So the
yes.
the book Startup Nation explores how is this country of Israel able to create so many entrepreneurs and such great success. And one of the big reasons and thesis and hypothesis that they break out is the fact that you're drafted into the military for standard military service. Then you typically, after 3 or 4 years, some people more, you then take at least a year or two off and travel the world. Then you go to college at the age of 23 or 24 or 25, and you don't start your professional career typically until you're 29 and 30.
Right, so I did exactly the opposite. I skipped kindergarten because I don't know, I could share and stack blocks, and I graduated from high school and went to college at 17, and then I graduated early from college because I'd had a bunch of AP classes because 'cause I'm an overachieving nerd, and I mean, yay for all my overachieving nerds out there, I still am one. I don't know why I say that in past tense, I am an overachieving nerd. So I
Hmm.
graduated from college early, and I went to law school at 21 years old, or 20, I was 20, I turned 21 the first month of law school. And so I remember going out to happy hour with my law school compatriots during the first week. And, it was one of those like get to know you social hours. And I looked around and I remember thinking, these are the people who have to be my quote unquote character witnesses for the bar after I pass the bar so I can become a licensed lawyer. And one of the questions is, have you ever seen this person knowingly break the law? And I was sitting there at this bar with my fake ID from college still in my back pocket. And I was like, do I order a drink? Do I break the law in front of these people? Or do I let them know that I'm 20? Like, what do I do?
Yeah.
So, like,
Ginger ale, please.
right. I mean, I was like, "I'll have a Shirley Temple, please."
Hmm.
So I dropped out of law school to join that, presidential campaign because Bill Clinton was giving a speech where he talked about this idea that there's nothing that's wrong with America that can't be fixed with what's right with America, which, by the
Hmm.
way, I still believe, even though we're in sort of a dark and, stormy headline period right now, I do believe that. But what he offered as a policy solution was service. National service, community service in exchange for college tuition.
Hmm.
Go out and change the world, and in the process, change yourself.
Yeah.
And I was like, "Yes, that needs to happen." And actually, my you talked about my TEDx going live probably today. The first TEDx I gave was about this moment when in my brain I went, "Oh, I've been running my entire life, my academic career to get to a place where I can be the one to solve all the problems.
Hmm.
How can I help? I'm the center of attention." When really what I needed to be asking was what needs to happen? What needs
Mm.
to happen to solve that problem? Sometimes it's me being in front, sometimes it's me being in back, and sometimes it's me not being involved at all. But
Yeah.
we don't learn that until we serve other people. And
Nice.
that perspective of serving other people makes us better in our careers. It makes us better as leaders. It makes us better family members, community members. So, you talk about this idea of service, for Israelis, it's being conscripted into the military. But my very unpopular opinion is that I think we should have a mandatory year of service here in the United States just to like be with people who don't look like you, think like you, love like you, pray like you, act like you, and
Yeah.
even value the same things you value, just to have empathy and understanding, but also that personal maturity to help you actually make some decisions.
Yeah. I don't quote me on this, but I'm pretty sure they do this in Switzerland, that after you graduate from your undergraduate, you have, it's like a year or two where you can either go join military or do community service,
Yes.
which I love that. I
Yes.
absolutely love that. And
Yeah.
and we all know, like, my best activities in college, university weren't in a classroom. It was being part of a fraternity. It was being involved with
Absolutely.
that charity event. It was being involved with that non-for-profit and volunteering and doing tutoring or whatever it might be. That's where we grow, is through those experiences.
Absolutely. And, what happens is, like, you grow up, in whatever, family structure you're going to have, and you cannot help but on board the values of that family structure. And
Mhm.
those actually might not reflect who you are, right? And it's not until you get out into the real world. I mean, here's an embarrassing story.
Please go on.
Yeah, I grew up in Miami, and I grew up I had a high school that was exceptionally diverse. It was one third Black, one third Latino, one third white. We had a small Asian population, but not a ton. But even within the Latino population, there were Venezuelans, there were Cubans, there were Puerto Ricans. Among the Blacks, we had Haitians, we had Dominicans, we had African Americans. I mean, we had everybody. We had rich kids, we had poor kids, we had all types.
Hmm.
And I thought I grew up like knowing the world. I thought I grew up understanding. It was like this like melting pot. Everybody was in everybody's business. When Barack Obama was elected, everyone's like, "We're living in a post-race society." I was like, "Post-race? Like, this feels more racist than when I was growing up in Miami."
Yeah.
And yet, when I got to college in Austin, Texas, I saw somebody like sleeping on the street. And I remember saying to a friend, I'm like, "Why is he sleeping on the street?" And my friend was like, "He's homeless." And I was like, "Oh."
Mm.
I was 17 years old before I understood that that was, a thing. That's pretty embarrassing, right? And I don't think that there's any way that we can go out into the world and live our lives by the same, bubble that we were raised inside of. I mean, it's not that my parents, valued or didn't value the issue of homelessness. They
Hmm.
just sheltered us from it. And so,
Yeah.
as you're growing and as you're getting older and as you're seeing more of the world and as the world is impacting you, we grow and we change and we make these decisions. So to like live our lives by that same like go out and pick a thing that you
Yeah.
picked when you were 15,
Yep.
we need a few more inputs.
Totally. And we know, I mean, we've all heard this, that the jobs that will exist in 15 years from now won't exist today.
Hmm.
So, I mean, this is why I've been such a disciple, obviously, of Simon Sinek's work, but it doesn't matter what you do. It matters why you do it. And what you do can constantly evolve and shift and grow and
Yes.
morph. Yeah.
It's funny. I have 2 kids. They're 18 and 20. My
Mhm.
eldest just finished freshman year in college, and my youngest is entering his senior year in high school. And the 2 of them are so stressed. What do we major in? Where am I going to go to school? This is all so definitional. And part of me is like, no, it doesn't. Right? Like, like the odds of you doing the job for which you majored are so low. The odds of that job even existing in 10 years, like,
Hmm.
you're going to make your own things. Like, the stuff that they enjoy doing didn't exist when I was growing up,
Yeah.
right? Like, I mean, like, the internet didn't exist when we were younger.
Yeah.
And so, to have the sense that exactly, like, the way the world's gonna be, like, we have to keep having those inputs, which means that we have to keep asking ourselves, "What really matters to me?" And we
Hmm.
have to keep having that culture where other people are speaking up and we're having those conversations. Because if we don't, it's just this like we're just in here all the
Yeah.
time and there's no progress to be made just in here.
Totally, totally. A couple shout outs here. Our friend Jesse Finkelstein says, there's resonance, there's dissonance, there's consonance. So I'd love to know more about consonance and what you mean by that. We also have Kaz here. What is success? How do you define it? So the thing that I harp on that I think might be nice for you to build on here at LGO is there's the whole pursuit of happiness.
Hmm.
I'm not much of a believer in the pursuit of happiness because happiness is a fleeting emotion.
Yes.
Sometimes we're happy, sometimes we're sad. And both are good and fine. I'm a big believer and proponent of the pursuit of fulfillment.
Hmm.
That when we use our strengths to contribute towards something bigger than ourselves, the result is fulfillment. We can
Hmm.
both be happy and or sad and still be fulfilled at the same time.
Absolutely. I mean, I think that happiness it's actually a stand-in, right? Like we think of happiness. So for example, if you are working in a cubicle and your best friend is in the cubicle next to you, you're going to be happy. If your office gives you free lunch, you're going to be happy, right? If it's bring your pet to work day, you're going to be happy. If they do your dry clean for you, you're going to be happy. These things build community. They're good for recruiting. They're super compelling, right? When you go to the bathroom and they're like on the back of the stall door, right? It's like, oh, that's cool. But these things don't last, right? Like these things don't help you feel like your work matters. These things don't help you feel fulfilled. These things don't get you up in the morning. Like nobody wakes up in the morning going, I can't wait to go to work today because they're got free dry cleaning, right? They're like, oh, I'm excited to go see my friend at work. But then what if your friend quits? Right? What if they hire somebody who's allergic to pets and suddenly you can't bring your pet to work on Fridays? Like, these things are so fleeting and they're so ephemeral. And as I mentioned earlier, they're always like one more thing away, right? Like I'll be happy when I get promoted. I'll be happy when I get the job. I'll be happy when I lose 10 pounds. I'll be happy when I get divorced. Like whatever the I'll be happy when thing is, it's just I'll be happy when means you can't be happy now. And so what I tell people to look for instead of this happiness is this alignment, right? It is, as I mentioned, when what you do matters to you, like you actually are, you care about it, and you feel important, right? It feels like the work that you're doing actually matters to the place where you're doing it. And so I break it down into four things. I break it down into calling, connection, contribution, and control. So calling is that gravitational force. It's the thing that when your alarm goes off in the morning, you're like, I am excited. I might be terrified. I may be stressed, right? But I'm excited to build this business, to grow this bottom line, to raise money for this cause, to do this research, to, build, nurture my family, right? What are the reasons? Like, what are the things you're excited about doing? It's your gravitational force that gets you up every day. Number one. Number two is connection. Does your work actually connect to that calling? So what if you called in sick to work tomorrow? Would anybody notice? Would anybody care? Right? Does the work you're doing actually connect to that calling that you just decided that you want to serve? Number three, contribution. So we think about connection as the work. Does the work matter? But contribution is really all about you. So how does this work contribute to the way that you want to live your life, the lifestyle you'd like to live, the flexibility that you want to have, the values that you want to manifest on a daily basis, the career trajectory that you want to earn? How is this work contributing to that life that you want? And then lastly is control. And control I'm fascinated by because I'm this huge control freak. And of all four of these things, the only one where people gain more during the last few years of the pandemic has been control. Control answers the question of how much personal agency do you have over where you do your work, when you do your work, the metrics by which your work is judged, the types of clients that you get to work with, the team members that are, put next to you. How much control do you have over how much your work connects to that calling and how much it contributes to your life? And it seems like in the pandemic, nobody felt like they had any control at all. But what was very interesting is that in the beginning, leaders were like, oh no, everything's falling apart. Let's get rid of everything that is not mission critical. People got to work from where they wanted, when they wanted, how they wanted, and leaders were just so excited that like the business was afloat that they got to have a bit more control over the actual work part of their lives. And so what's interesting about this is that you don't have to have all four of them. Like at every different age and every different stage, how much of each you want is going to, ebb and flow. What matters is that we don't take the definition that we got at 15 and keep it. We just every like 7 years or so, which I think is when like if you have kids or if the kids are grown or if you get married, you get divorced, there's a global pandemic, there's an election, like, things like shift and change. I think it's a matter of going back and revisiting this definition with the grace to know that it's going to change and that's okay.
And I think it's 7 years that it takes for every single cell in our body to regenerate. We actually become an entirely new person. Same DNA, but it's 7 years as well.
But think about it. Like, are you the same person you were in 2015?
Evolving, growing, of course.
And even if you were, think about how different the world is right now than 2015. So even if you are exactly the same person and have the same values, the way that they manifest in your work looks totally different.
Nice. And this is Tara, my good friend Tara says, and that is why spending time reflecting and tapping in to what we actually want is so important, both solo reflection, sharing those reflections with friends, coaches, mentors, colleagues, etc. And Jay Fink, as I like to call her, Jesse Finkelstein, also says, my husband and I are going to meet with our 17-year-old and its guidance counselor today. Oh, I love it. To talk about post-secondary options. This conversation is lighting me up and calming me down at the same time. Oh, I love it, Jesse. I will go in with a limitless mindset. So good. Love that. So shall we? We're about 25 minutes in, about 20 minutes left or so. Please keep the comments and the questions coming. I would like to, if you're up for it, I know you have a TEDx talk from Reno coming out yesterday, today, any minute. Should have been out yesterday, but hopefully today. And you spoke about your latest work, Wonderhell.
Yes.
And when you described Wonderhell to me, and I'm not going to steal your thunder because you will do it justice better than I will. But like it hit me viscerally, and I was like, "Oh, I'm living that right now. Please go on." But maybe I'm afraid for you too. So tell us about Wonderhell. Tell us about it's this moment where like all of the things you dreamed of are finally happening, and you're like, "Shit."
Exactly. So when Limitless came out, honestly, I expected like 3 people to buy it, and at least one of those would be a used copy, right? So, and then it debuted at number 2 on the Washington Post bestseller list, right behind Michelle Obama, and I was like, wait, what? And I happened to find out that it was debuting on the same day that I was speaking on stage where I was opening for Malala, like Malala, right? And I had a couple years earlier sold that executive search firm, and I got asked to do this TEDx, and that TEDx got some attention, and I got asked to speak for like money, and I was like, well, this is interesting. I've just spent 20 years in consulting deliverables, and you mean I get to just go somewhere, fly there, I speak for 45 minutes, and you hand me a check? Tell me more about this job. Sounds very interesting.
And
So,
wasn't the TEDx the very first time that you ever did a talk?
Yes, it was the very first talk I ever gave in my life. And in fact, when I got asked to do that, my first response was, no fucking way. No way. Like, speak in public, that is terrifying. I do not want to do that. And my kids were in the back seat, and they heard me take this call on speakerphone. Because I'm a good mom, can't pick up the phone. So I took it on speakerphone, which was my first mistake. And when I hung up the phone, they were like, hey, Mom, don't you tell me I got to do things that scare me? And don't you tell us that life starts on the other side of the fear? And don't you always say it doesn't challenge us, it doesn't change us? And I was like, God, you don't listen to me tell you to pick up your socks, but this you listen to. So yeah. So 6 weeks later, I'm on the stage and I'm giving that talk. And it was exciting and interesting and heady. And it was like, I got on stage and I said that it was funny, and a guy at stage left laughed, and I was like, oh. And then I said something poignant, and somebody stage left went, yes. And I was like, yeah. And it was like, all of a sudden I was like, I need more. I need to do this. I need more of this. So I started speaking, and as I was speaking, I started to notice that people who were making real money on stage all had books. So I was like, I got to get me one of them. So I wrote this book like in a hurry. I was like, I got to do it. It took me 6 weeks to write it.
Wow.
The truth is, it took me 25 years and 6 weeks to come up with it. So it wasn't just like a slapdash job. Like it's a book based on more than 2 decades of actually, working. It was so ready to come out of me because I'd spent so long thinking about these ideas. So the book is successful, and I'm on an airplane heading back from a speech I was giving in Vancouver. And it's like 4 in the morning, or maybe it's 1 in the morning, or maybe it's 7 in the morning. I'd like lost track of time and
It's
space.
morning.
It's morning.
It's a time you shouldn't be awake and functioning.
And I'm on this red eye, and I'm in a center seat, and I've got like 2 gigantic like humans like snoring on either side of me. And I just was like, I give up. I give up. So I open up my laptop and I just write this long Facebook post about how this thing happened that I wasn't expecting. And I knew that I wanted something, but I didn't realize how good it could be. It was a success that I wasn't quite sure I could pull off.
Mm-hmm.
And then there it was. And I was like, I have totally lost track between of where I am, between the blur that's the past and the blur that's going to be the future. But all I know right now is the space I'm in at present. And the space I'm in at present is Wonderhell. It is
Mm.
amazing. It is humbling. It is wonderful that this book was successful. And also at the same time, I have never been so exhausted in my entire life. I am full of anxiety and fear and self doubt and uncertainty. It's actually kind of hell. And it was kind of hell because in the wonderful,
Mm-hmm.
the burden of my potential walked in and was like, hey, what you got for me? Are you gonna live into this newfound you that you didn't even know existed last week, last month, last year? Or are you gonna let it
Mm.
pass you by? And it's in that moment of wonder hell that you realize, I think I want more.
Mm.
And then you go, oh no, like, what am I gonna do now? Like, how am I gonna do it? I'm already so tired. But also, I can't unsee the possibility that this wonder hell just showed me.
Yeah.
Shit.
So good. So good. Yeah, so and as you described this, I mean, I'm going through a version of it right now where it's like, huh, I think I came
Huh.
across an idea for a book. Huh, I guess I should probably build a business around it. Oh, now I have to work nights to just keep up. I need help. Okay, I'm going to hire someone. Oh, we need to decide which technology suite that we're going to go with. Google or Microsoft. I don't know. I just felt like I went through building my first piece of IKEA furniture with my team.
Except there's
Um,
always screws left over, and you're like, "Was that on purpose or did I?" Yeah. But
it's
here's the thing.
working.
So what
Yeah.
happened when I found myself in Wonder Hell is I just
Hmm.
started talking to people, right? One of the great things about being a speaker, and I didn't know there's like a secret hack, is that you get to meet other speakers, and these other speakers are usually speakers because they've accomplished something interesting, or at least they know how to tell a good story.
Yeah.
And so I called them all up, and I was like, "What am I going to do?" And I started interviewing people on this LGO TV. I was like, I might as well have these conversations live. It's a pandemic. Everybody's trying to pump out content. Here's some content I can pump out. I'm just going to have these conversations
Hmm.
and learn stories about everyone's moment of wonder hell and what they did about it. And I ended up talking to like 100 people, and these were startup unicorns. These were glass ceiling breakers. These were Olympic medalists. These were people like you and people like me who, aren't breaking anything or shattering anything or winning any medals, but who sort of went through the same moment, big or small. And they were people who had their very first success or people who did, 9-figure sales of businesses. And what I learned is that they all had these same breakthrough moments that felt like breakdown moments.
Mm.
These were, doubt and fear and exhaustion and envy and burnout. They all had them not just at the major success, but at each success along the way. And what I realized was that if they're going to go through this each time, then we're going to go through this each time too. And if we're going to go through this each time too, we better learn how to deal with it. Because everything that I've read about, leaning in and 10xing, and it was just like, you got to like get gritty and get hard and, survive these moments. And I was like, well, that's horseshit. Like, if we're going to have these moments over and over and over, I want to learn how to thrive in these moments. And so here's what I learned. I learned 3 things. Number 1, they embraced their ambition.
Mm.
They were like, okay, cool. This thing is a thing. I actually want it. And I'm not going to name it so I can tame it. I'm going to name it so I can claim it. And I realized that in 20 years of executive search, the internal candidate who didn't get the job always left. And the reason why was because in the process of interviewing for this bigger job, they saw themselves in the bigger job. They wore the clothes of that role. They spoke in the voice of that role. They answered questions in that role, and they couldn't unsee part of themselves in that role. And every time you see your wonder hell, you can't unsee part of yourself in this role either.
Hmm.
Number 2, they renegotiated their relationship with all of the emotions surrounding it, the good, the bad, and the ugly, these uncomfortable feelings that we have when we're like, oh, I don't know, should I want more? Can I want more? I'm stressed, I'm exhausted, I don't know. They didn't see them as, oh shit, run, run, run. They saw them as signposts that
Mm.
they were on the right track. So they changed the voice in their head from saying, oh no, you haven't done this before, to yay, you haven't done this before. And they saw these moments as a path to growth. And
Nice.
then lastly, they understood that Wonderhell loves itself a repeat visitor.
Hmm.
So they knew that they were going to see it again and again and again if they were lucky. And so they started to plan for it, to
Mm.
grow from it, to learn from it, and to actually enjoy it.
Love that. Love
So
that.
that's what we do. Like, we can't just say, I'm going to like hunker down and I'm just going to survive this, because if you survive it, all that does is leave you in the hell all the time, and it never gives you any of the wonder.
Nice. And it's just it's positively training ourselves that this is just a sign of growth. And this is
Yes.
a sign of more and a sign of change. Because
Yes.
what got us here won't get us to where we're going next.
Exactly. We were talking before we started recording that, growth is hard, right? Growth is wonderful, but growth is hard.
Hmm.
If growth wasn't hard, it wouldn't be growth. And you said, yeah, it would just be gross. That was hilarious. But there's this moment. So I am a long distance runner, and there's this moment in the marathon where you're like, I wonder what happens now, right? Like,
Mm,
I'm at the edge.
yeah.
I can't do it anymore. I don't know how to do it. I have to put one foot in front of the other for how many more miles? And you're the only one, right? You've got this voice in your head going, "You're gonna die out here," and this other one going, "You're amazing." And you have to
Mhm.
decide which one's gonna win.
Yeah.
And the thing is, it's really just a matter of just staying in that pain cave just a little bit longer. But that's a mindset thing, right? That's
Yeah.
a thing that says, like, this is going to be hard.
Mm.
Growth should be hard. If it's not hard, it's not growth, it's stagnation.
Hmm. Nice. A couple of tools that come to mind. So I work closely with this guy, Rich Davini, who wrote the book, The Attributes. We'll
Yes.
have Rich on the show at some point. So Rich is a retired U.S. Navy SEAL, was with the SEALs for 20 plus years, obviously went through SEAL selection, which is one of the most gruesome things ever. A couple of tools he taught me. One is ask better questions.
Yes.
So as human beings, we're question asking and answering machines. So a fun little exercise that we often do is we say, we're in a workshop, and out of nowhere we say, write down as many ideas as you can to double your income over the next 6 months. You're already thinking of stuff, right?
Mhm.
And it could be driving Uber, it could be selling your kidney. Don't recommend it. But we constantly think of answers to the questions because we prompted a question, which points that we're question answering machines, which means we should be mindful of the questions we're asking ourselves.
Yes.
We could ask ourselves disempowering questions. Why me? Why do I suck at this? Why does this always happen to me? Or we could ask ourselves more empowering questions like, how can I grow from this? How are we or I qualified to do this? What's possible here? And the best hack, which is if you don't have a better question, just ask yourself, what's a better question to be asking right now?
I
Which
love
is
that.
so good. And then the other is to honor our antagonists. So in the theatrical sense, a protagonist is an idea, force, thing, something within us, another person that is for the main idea, and
Yes.
an antagonist is against the main idea. And there are these things: COVID, a cancer diagnosis, the loss of a loved one, having a toxic, awful boss, that are all these things that are seemingly antagonists, that are things that are seemingly working against us.
Mhm.
But those who are really successful, running a marathon, right? The antagonist of that pain and that distance. But the most successful among us honor that antagonist, ask better questions around it so that we can use it as an opportunity for growth as opposed to an opportunity for something to crush us.
Yeah, absolutely. I was if we're showing off books, I interviewed Alex Carter yesterday on my show. Ask for More: 10 Questions to Negotiate Anything, and she
Yeah.
she runs the
I have
Columbia
more
Law
books
School.
here. I have
Yeah,
more books.
I
Yeah.
have a lot of books.
Yeah.
But she said something about questions that I thought was very interesting. Is a lot of times when we're asking ourselves questions and we're asking ourselves sort of the negative, just even flipping it around to the other side. Right. So if we're asking ourselves, if we're saying something like I have this feeling, right? And this feeling is making me say, like, well, why am I always so dumb? Like, how could I be smarter? Right. Like, what
Mm.
can I do to get smarter about this? And it's just taking the same as a question and flipping it around to the other way, which then often gives you the pathway forward.
What's an example of that, or say more about that?
Well, so like if I was talking to her about this, sort of my love language is words of affirmation, right? Like if I feel like I'm not being appreciated, like right now, I'm like nobody's appreciating the hard work that I'm doing, and
Hmm.
so taking that feeling and sort of switching it around and saying, how can I find a way to be more appreciated?
Mm.
Appreciated in the work that I do. How can I get more appreciation from other people? Okay, well, I could tell them I need it. I can
Mm.
ask for it. I could maybe not do all my work in silence and quiet, right? Like, how do I,
Nice.
like, what do I do? And so sometimes just taking the feeling that we have, that this negative feeling, I'm not good enough. How can I get better at this? I don't think they're going to like me. How can I, understand whether they do or not, right? Just giving, like, taking there's this thing, like, in the absence of stories, we create monsters.
Hmm.
right? So like, how do we give ourselves data so
Nice.
that we can say, I would actually be good at this because I was good at these other things, right? Like, how do we figure out a better foundation on which to stand? And usually it's taking the feelings and changing it into a fact-based question.
Nice. So I love that, as opposed to why am I not getting, how might I be able to get? This matters to
Exactly.
me. How can I get it?
Exactly. It's sort
Love
of that
that.
old thing, like they say, like, don't gun for the promotion, become the person who is, better at the work so they get the promotion. Don't like gun for the boyfriend or girlfriend, like become a person who's interesting enough that somebody's interested in you, right? Like
Yeah.
become the person who is worthy of the things rather than just wanting the thing.
Yeah. Well, speaking of words of affirmation, there's no better compliment than LinkedIn users saying you are amazing, amazingly inspiring, Laura. Thank you so much, Stephen. And LinkedIn user, please feel free to let us know and identify yourself here. A couple questions, and then we're wrapping up
Yeah.
here. From our friend Brian Wish.
Hey,
I
Brian.
grew up with the quote on my wall: "You're only as good as your last at bat." Ooh, that can be hard. So, how do you redefine success for yourself once you've peaked the first mountain? And is this process repeatable from one success to the next? I know Brian is watching from South Africa today. Thank you for being with us, Brian.
That's fantastic. I love this question because I grew up as a very gold star oriented person. And when the pandemic started, I stopped sleeping. I
Hmm.
just like, I didn't sleep. I think I slept like 2 hours every night for 3 months straight. And I got to the point where I was really unable to string words together, which, as a person who writes and speaks for a living, kind of a problem, right?
Yeah.
So I actually went to go see a psychiatrist because I was like, I think my brain is broken. Like, I think I've got like slow roll trauma, something's going on. Maybe I've got like a tumor, like there's something happening in my brain. And he's like, no, he's like, I diagnose you with formerly gold star chasing, but can't chase the gold star in a pandemic disease, was basically what he diagnosed it of. And he said, he said, look, you're an overachiever. We can work on that. And I was like, dude, no, like that's a feature, not a bug. And he was like, yeah, but it's not tenable. Like it's not working for you. And I was like, oh no, it's perfect. And he's like, yeah, but you're here.
Mm.
And I was like, well, okay, that's a good argument, right? And he said something to me in that moment that has really shaped my thinking for the last couple of years. He said, Laura, you don't have to give the trophies back.
Hmm.
And I was like, oh, wow. So I don't know that you're only as good as your last at bat. You still collect all the, you still
Yeah.
collect all of the data, right? You still collect all of the numbers. You still collect all of the accomplishments. It doesn't matter if it was last week or last month or last year. Like, I ran a marathon last year. I hadn't run one since 2014, but I was still a marathoner, right? Like
Mm.
I'd still done it. I didn't have to have a certain hour. My running coach once said to me, when anybody asks you what your time was in the marathon, you just say, it was the time of my life.
Hmm.
Right. So I think there's a couple things. Number one, you don't have to give the trophies back. So you don't have to keep, repeating and repeating and repeating the success in order to be worthy.
Yeah.
Number two, you define what that success is. So, my husband and I several years ago did a massive construction project in our house, and somebody was like, was it successful? And I was like, we're still happily married. Everybody's definition is different. And so I think you get to repeat one thing
Yeah.
that is what is important to you.
Yeah.
And that's success and only that.
Yeah. I posted recently that high performance all the time is not sustainable. That's what leads to burnout, and it's about optimal performance, meaning that we
Yes.
can give the best we can at any particular moment. And this is also a
Yes.
concept that Rich Davini talks about: optimal performance.
I interviewed Sally Krawcheck, who is the CEO, the founder of Elevest, which
Hmm.
is $2 billion under management. And at a certain time, she was the CEO of Smith Barney. She was running Morgan Stanley. She's the only woman in history to be fired on the front cover of the Wall Street Journal, not once but twice. Right? That's pretty impressive. And she said, and so she was always somebody who was working fast and breaking things and growing. And I was like, how'd you do it? Like, how'd you do that and raise a family and everything? And she said to me, I just decided to be average as a
Hmm.
mom. Like, I am somebody who was like straight A's, perfect scores, always the fastest to get to the promotion and the growth and the corner office and all that. And she's like, and I just decided that my family they couldn't absorb the full Sally. Like, I just was going to be average. Not I wasn't going to be a good enough mom, but like
Hmm.
I didn't have to be all the things all the time to all the people. And
Yeah.
that was her place to just be Sally.
Hmm.
And I thought that was pretty great.
Yeah, yeah. It's also this, "What have you done for me lately?" I think is you're only as
Mhm.
good as your last at bat. And I've seen organizations that have lost a lot of amazing, talented, high value people because they underperform for a period of 3 months. which is like, well, do you have any awareness of what's going on in their life? Or maybe the wrong things are on their plate, or maybe they're working for a boss that isn't a right fit. And I think that we owe people more than just, well, your last few at-bats weren't so good, so see ya. It's like, really?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And I think that I don't know if we talked about this on my show, but I had, when I was running my search firm, I had somebody who worked for me who was so good at her work, and I was desperate to promote her. And I was like, "Come on, you got to be
You
a
told
vice
me this.
president. Yeah, you got to
Yeah.
be a vice president." And she was like, "Laura, I'm pregnant. I'm going to have a baby. And after that, I want to have another one. And I'd like to not be gunning in my career right now because I want to gun at home." And, she was like, I can only do so much. And she's like, I don't want to not be good enough here. And so she waited, and we let her wait, and we let her be an expert in her role while that was the role that she wanted. And, now she's a vice president. She's amazing. And so it's, I think that that's really important for leaders to figure out what really turns on their team, what gets them excited, and to allow them to be experts in that role.
And by the way, don't make assumptions, ask questions. I mean, a good friend of mine who does amazing stuff on LinkedIn, Meeta Malik, just posted that she wanted to go for a VP role that required a lot of travel. And her boss said, no, you have young kids. And she's like, no, like, I want to do it.
Yes.
And
yeah.
I
So
love
the
that
opposite of what I was saying.
the
Yeah.
total opposite. So
Yes.
I love that.
And you
Time
don't
for-
know. You have
Yeah.
no idea.
Yeah. Time for one last more question. I think it's from Christy O'Connor, who's our LinkedIn user here. What inspires, motivates you to stay in the moment, however brutal it may be, to push through and embrace change? And then we will wrap up.
I think it really comes down to whether or not this goal is your goal or someone else's goal, right? Like I've talked to a lot of endurance athletes, and they're like, you know what? It turns out that some of the goals aren't your goals, like a time goal, a certain race, a certain thing. They're look good goals. Like they look good on the wall. They're not actually your goals. And we can't be insatiably hungry for someone else's goal. So, whether it's your boss or a parent or the Kardashians or whoever who's telling you that you should want the thing, if you don't want the thing, it doesn't matter how long you suffer through the pain. Even when you get the thing, you're not going to care. So
Yeah.
I think the question isn't how do we keep pushing through? It's how do we determine the right goals? Because if we determine the right goals, then we're going to want to push through.
Yeah. There's a difference. I've heard a difference between sacrifice and torture. Sacrifice is pursuing something for a known period of time for a known good. If either the good or the time period are unknown, it can quickly become torture.
Yes.
So
I love that.
think, yeah. So really good. Amazing. Remember, take it from a control freak, a high achieving control freak, an LGO, that you can keep your trophies.
You can keep your
You've earned
trophies.
them. They're yours. This was so wonderful to have you on. Please refresh everyone, TED and YouTube, to watch Laura's TEDx talk from Reno on Wonderhell. I know I will. Laura, any final words where people can learn more? Anything else you want to impart with us? And
Yeah,
thank
sure.
you for joining us.
Yeah, absolutely. I love this conversation. As you said, it also went so fast. If you're interested in calling, connection, contribution, and control, there are 4 questions you have to ask yourself. And you can find them at my4questions.com. If you want to do a little bit deeper dive on that, you can go to limitlessassessment.com. That's limitlessassessment.com. My name is Laura Gassner Otting. All my good friends like Shed call me LGO. So everybody can find me on all the socials, and my website is at Hey LGO.
Well,
Hey LGO.
Hey LGO, thank you for this. This was a delight. And look forward to connecting again. Always love speaking with you. I leave with greater energy and greater optimism. So much fun.
Thanks so much for having me, Shed. This is great.
Awesome. Take care, all. Thanks for joining us.